basically, just, when disaster strikes, it's always good to check on your neighbor. And so this is kind of our way of checking on our neighbor and seeing how they're doing and what they need. So I think we'll kick things off with some introductions from our four experts, and let you introduce yourselves and tell a little bit about what you do in terms of serving farmers in these conditions, and maybe what services and programming that could be helpful to them. Matt, do you mind kicking it off? You were the first one on today, so
Sure, absolutely. That's no problem at all.
Thanks.
My name's Matt Kleski. I'm the Chief Program Specialist for in the Ohio State Farm Service Agency for Production Adjustment and Compliance section. Also, I'll introduce her real quick. We have Christina Cooley that's on the call with me. She's our PR outreach specialist as well. So we've been tag teaming a lot of a variety of meetings just here on, the drought issues, and now some of the drought issues have turned into Hurricane Helene and those kind of issues too. So it's been a very interesting year. Now, John, do you want me to go ahead and talk on the programs now, or do you want me to kind of pause and do that in a little bit? I'm fine either way. Oh, but I think you're on mute.
You're muted, John.
Yeah, maybe come back around to that, and maybe there'll be some folks interested in that, and more interested in that information in a minute. If not,
Yes,
I think we'd all like to hear it too.
absolutely. Yep. So I'll leave it at that for now, and then we'll let everybody else do their introductions.
Sounds good. Bridget, are you ready?
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Bridget Britton, and I'm with the Ohio State University Extension Office, and I am the behavioral health field specialist. So I serve the whole state of Ohio, and I do suicide and mental health prevention education in all 88 counties. And basically, I'll do anything from mental health first aid to go around and do speaking engagements like this. And I really work with the farmers and those that work with the farmers, agencies and things like that, to try to help them better understand mental health and suicide prevention, and how really we can better support farmers, whether it's during difficult times or just anytime in general. And then making sure that they have the resources that they need, because that is something that I hear all the time, is that, I don't know where the resources are. So I try to make it as easily accessible as I can, to know where the resources are for them in their local community.
Thank you. Nathan, if it's okay, I think you'll have you go next, and then Stephanie, you can give us a little insight into the conditions from this summer. So go ahead, Nathan.
So, well, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'm a first-generation farmer here in Highland County, mainly row crops, corn, soybeans, but also have a small cow-calf herd, and we've got a flock of sheep, and then I also kind of have a flock of kids. So all that keeps me pretty busy. On top of that, I guess I also serve as a board member on the Ohio Farm Bureau State Board of Directors, the Ohio Farm Bureau Foundation. Do a lot of things with farmers and mental health advocacy. That's probably one of my big things that I've really tried to focus on and hone in on the last few years. Just trying to make sure that our farmers realize and know that they're not alone, and that there's resources out there for them, and trying to keep advocating for, and to get, like Bridget said, what resources are out there and what resources do we need to bring to our communities. That's pretty much my spiel.
And I can go next if you're ready.
So my name is Stephanie Karhoff. I'm a field specialist as well with Ohio State University Extension. So my focus area is agronomic systems. So I do primarily applied field research and programming geared towards corn, soybean, wheat, and forage producers across the state. And I also served on our drought response team that was led by our climatologist, Dr. Aaron Wilson. So I'm stepping in for him today. He had another meeting at the same time. As you can imagine, he's been very in demand this year, always in demand, but especially so this year with the drought conditions. John, did you want me to just go ahead and start with Aaron's notes, or what was your preferred?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so a few notes from Aaron. We started to coalesce this drought response team that we've had in the past in early July. So they really had some early drought indicators in early July, and then that progressed or early June, I should say. And then the last week of June, if you follow that US drought monitor, which gives us an idea of the severity of drought in different areas, and it's using both objective values, but also local expertise, local impacts. So for example, Nathan in Highland County could get on their website, submit his local impacts experiences, and that would be weighed into whether or not Highland County is deemed a D1 to D4 drought level, with D4 being the highest level of drought in that monitoring system. So the last week of June, we saw the first D1 designation in southeastern Ohio, and then as we know, that progressed even further. So August 27th in Aaron's notes, that was our first D4 designation in Ohio. And that is the first time that we've had D4 designation with that newer US drought monitor in Ohio. So keep in mind, this drought monitor system is different than would have been in the 80s, for example. So when you're trying to compare to different droughts, it's a little bit difficult to understand which one was more severe versus which one had more coverage. The unique thing about this drought, in my opinion, is that it came more mid to late season than other ones we've experienced in the past, like 2012. And then the real peak for the drought then was September 24th. And so there we saw over 12% of the state was at D4. So concentrated in that southeastern to central, even west central Ohio, having the higher levels of drought. And then we also had a wide swath of Ohio, anywhere from D1 to D4. And even in recent monitoring reports, we do have that northwest corridor for a while there before some recent rainfall last week of Lucas, Fulton, parts of Williams counties also having some drought declaration. So if it works, I can talk a little bit about some impacts we saw with our producers that we were in communication with. I think the strength of our drought response team, that it was serving really as a two-way communication system between Ohio State Extension and our stakeholders and the producers that were in the thick of it, and making sure that we were addressing their needs and also having that boots on the ground information to really guide us. So if that works, I could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I think that'd be great.
Okay. So it really hit hard on the area of the state where we have a lot of pasture fields, beef cow operations. And so we saw deteriorating pasture conditions pretty early on. And then our first cutting hay, probably average yield, decent quality, but then every subsequent cutting after really shortened below average yield. And that's going to have both short-term impacts right now, talking about alternative feeds. What are we using, feeding out through the winter months? And maybe long-term impacts if there was some early weaning or those that ended up selling cows because of that low forage situation going on, especially in southeastern Ohio. So some questions we were getting, for example, were, can I use soybean as an alternative forage? Things of that nature, trying to find some unique solutions for that lower forage supply this year. Personally, I deal more with those on the corn, wheat, soybean side. So for us, we saw lower yields in Southern Ohio this year overall, and just a really big variability. So it's always going to vary year to year, but this year it really just came down to, did you get the rains? When did you get the rains? As far as, are you in the 30 bushel per acre versus 60 bushel per acre soybean field? And then insult to injury was really after Hurricane Helene. We saw wind come into that area that already had brittle corn stalks. So we saw a lot of lodging, low grain moisture levels really led to a lot of shattering in beans. And then with that storm coming in, we saw even more soybean lost. If you drive around the state, you can see a lot of fields that look like spring right now. You can see soybean seedlings in those fields and ask yourself what month it really is. But really, that's all the soybean that we lost either during harvest or before harvest that are now germinating. So pretty big impact this fall on our producers. So I'd be happy to take any questions or relay any questions back to Aaron as well.
Great information. Thanks. Interesting. I'm wondering if there are any farmers on the call who would like to share their experiences this year with the drought. There's a few people on here I don't recognize. I'm not sure if you're farmers or not, but if so, and you would like to share, feel free to speak up. If not, we'll pick on Nathan a little bit since he's out there harvesting beans right now.
So
Hey,
I think
can I jump in, John?
Yeah, certainly.
Hi, I'm Julie. I am actually an OEFFA staffer, but I'm joining this as a producer because I'm a producer too. So I'm a livestock farmer in Southeast Ohio, and yeah, normally I graze until almost December, and this year I had to start feeding hay in August. So I just have been really worried about where I'm going to get hay for this year and the whole winter. Spending a lot of time on the phone trying to find hay and feeling stressed out about it for sure. And I was wondering if what you guys can tell me, like, where is there some kind of centralized someplace that either Ohio State has or Farm Bureau has or ODA has about people who are selling hay and how to find it?
That's a great question, Julie. The two resources I'm aware of, and anyone else, feel free to chime in if you're aware of others. One is ODA has their directory of those that are selling forage, selling hay, and they have those listed out in the contact information. And then Josh Winters is our A&R extension educator in Jackson County, and he's kind of just based off of local needs, starting curating his own list in that region. So I'm not sure how far away you are from his area, but I can connect you. I can put both those links in the chat.
And I just put the ODA link in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That'd be great if you could put, yeah, I'm not sure where Josh Winters is, but if you could put the link in the chat, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Thanks.
We've got a hay resource as well. Julie, I don't know if you've poked around on that yet, but OEFFA has one internally. I'm not sure if it might be on the website, but at least in the resource library that I can get to you as well.
John, we'll take that as well because we have a site, a farm stress on our farm stress site. So we'll take that as well to add to
Great.
ours.
Terrific.
Yeah, can you put that one in the chat too, John? Just so I know where it is.
Yeah, are we able to do that, Casey?
Yeah, if it's part of the resource library, we might have to save it as a PDF and all that fun stuff, but
Okay. Nathan, what about you? How you doing and what do you need?
so. I guess, yeah, our county was we ended up getting up to part of Highland County was a D4. Where I particularly farmed, we were at a D3 was the highest that we got to. You know, as I said, I've got a cow calf herd and a flock of sheep. We really spring started out well for us planting wise. We got all of our crops in the ground in fairly decent time. You know, and the first part of June was a little bit of wet, but then after that, we pretty well dried up fairly quickly. Our first cut in the hay was probably, I would say it was probably about 3/4 of what it normally was. Quality was good, but there just wasn't a lot of tonnage there. And by 4th of July, our pastures were really starting to dry up from a lack of moisture. By the second, third week of July, I started feeding hay to the cows and my flock of sheep. By the 1st of August, we were feeding hay, which normally I can graze all of them, you know, pretty much through fall and not have any issues. So, I'm actually at this point in time, I've kind of decided that, you know, we have second cutting was almost non-existent. Third cutting, we just never, there was nothing that ever grew back. So we have maybe 20 round bales left of hay that, you know, normally at this time of the year I should have 150, and between the shortage of hay production plus our feeding of it so early in the year, probably looking at liquidating most of our cow herd and possibly some of our flock. Just there's not a lot of resources in here, you know, in our area for hay. There are, you know, ODA and some of them have been working hard to get some connections made, but still at the end of the day, when you weigh out, you know, what it's going to cost me to bring in hay and stuff, it's not penciling out very well for me at this point in time. So looking at liquidating that. Crop wise, we're finishing up soybean harvest here hopefully today. I would say we are probably a little over 50% of what our normal production is. For the most part, we've had a few good fields, but we've had a lot of disappointing fields. And then when the hurricane came through, it did blow a lot of our corn down flat. And our soybeans, a lot of our soybeans sprouted in the pods. You know, we jumped in and tried to cut a lot of beans before the hurricane. We had a lot of beans that were ready, but then with that, we had a lot of shatter loss, a lot of harvest loss, just because the beans were so dry. We cut a lot of 6-7% beans, and which is way too dry. But you know, the pods were already splitting and they were already falling on the ground. So we figured we were better to harvest something at 8% than to leave it there and hope we get some rain, and then who knows what was going to be left. The remnants after that, you know, we had what beans were left, and it doesn't matter if they were mature or if they were green or even if they were double crop beans. We had a lot of sprouting issues in those. And so as we have gotten in the harvest since the hurricane came through, we're seeing a lot of more damage in our beans. Luckily, we've been able to find places that are taking soybeans just because it's such a widespread problem that a lot of the elevators are opening up and making room and taking them. So definitely it's been a very trying year. I know that as I have talked to neighbors and other producers that, you know, normally are gung-ho and cheery about things, this has been a tough season for them. I remind all my buddies to make sure that if they're not okay, that they're making phone calls and talking about it and not keeping it in. And I remind guys to make a list of 5 guys and make an effort during the week to call those 5 guys and just check on them. You know, there's a lot of, you know, commodity prices and stuff, the way that they have gone over the last 24 months. This is going to be a very challenging year for guys to make a profit, and I'm afraid that there's going to be producers that are either going to say enough's enough, or that the banks are going to put pressure on them, and we're going to lose some guys out of the farming profession. It's tough, and it's guys that I've been to meetings and spoke, you know, about checking on your friends and the mental health thing, and I've had guys come out to me that are very successful with tears in their eyes, and they're like, I just don't know what we're going to do. And so it's very scary times out there, and there's so much uncertainty in the world, everything that's going on. I just keep reminding guys that we got to keep checking on each other. At the end of the day, you're more than your farm. You're a family member, you're a husband, a brother, a friend, and that is more important than your farm. And you being here is more important, and just gotta love on one another again, guys, because we've kind of forgot about that and went to our own corners and did our own thing for a lot of years, and we've lost that community, I think. And just keep telling guys, let's love one another.
Well, I appreciate that insight. I think that's something that's tends to be overlooked. The stress and the emotional toll that events like this have on individuals. Are you seeing that, Bridget? Are you getting people reaching out to you with the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I just echo, of course, everything, Nathan, that you have shared about checking in on each other. I think one of the biggest things that I have seen over the last, since June and July, is that people and agencies especially, are much more willing to have these open conversations and invite uh myself and probably others. Nathan can probably attest to this, just having that conversation as part of, okay, we're talking about the drought. Okay, we're talking about resources for the drought, right? And we're having, people like Aaron, who is a wonderful also advocate for mental health. We're having him in. Let's also have somebody like myself, like Bridget or like Nathan, come in and also talk about the mental health toll that this is having, which I think, if that's any silver lining to this drought, that's what it is, in my opinion, right? Is that we're starting to talk more openly about mental health in the agriculture community. A lot of people are coming up to me, farmers in particular, are coming up to me and saying, this is reminiscent of 88, and I don't want this to be 88 again. And I don't want to lose some of my friends and fellow farmers like we did in 88. And I'm so glad that we're talking about this. And, I've been speaking more at local soil and water events and, FSA events and things like that, just where maybe I otherwise have to kind of, I guess, knock on the door a little bit harder. I'm not having to knock as hard maybe as I usually do. I still will knock, but they're maybe letting me in a little bit easier some places. And so, um, again, what Nathan is saying, some people are really, really struggling, but a lot of people are more willing to kind of talk about it. And especially the people that work with the farmers and producers are more willing to bring us into that space, and say, you know what, this is also important aside from that. But I would just share some of the resources that we have so that you have those for your farmers that you work with, and I'll put them in the chat as well. But extension, I saw that Stephanie put on there the Knowledge Exchange. A lot of our farm stress resources are on the Knowledge Exchange website, but we have a website. It's just go.osu.edu/farm stress. And that has blogs. It has everything from, stuff about the drought. It has stuff about 988, which is the suicide and mental health prevention lifeline. If you're not familiar with that, it is a 24/7, 365 phone number that you can call if you're not only having thoughts of suicide, but also if you're feeling extreme mental health distress. So thinking about, severe depression or anxiety, and you just need somebody to talk to. That's what I really advocate for 988 in the agriculture community, because like Nathan is a really prime example right now, right? He's sitting in his tractor doing his work. And if he just needs somebody to talk to because he's feeling, some depression and anxiety, he can just call 988 and talk to somebody. And it's totally anonymous. And you can call as many times as you need in a day, right? If you need to call every hour. And it is a national hotline, but they're going to know your local resources. And it's changed. You might know the 1-800 number, suicide lifeline, but this has changed from that. And so it's super easy to remember, just like 911, it's 988. And if it ever is a crisis situation, 988 will transfer you to 911. So you don't have to worry about that. So I'm a huge advocate for 988. And I'm sure Nathan is as well. And so that's big for our agriculture communities that I try to promote. And then we have a county resource guide that is available on our Farm Stress website, but it actually also has its own link as well that I'll put in the chat. It's the same Go link, go.osu.edu. They make it really easy for us, / county resource guide. And it will give you all 88 counties in Ohio and all the mental health professionals, agencies, local drug and alcohol recovery boards in your county. So you can click on Adams County and it will give you all the information for that. You know, your local, I just am thinking of Tuscarawas County because that's where I live, so Springvale, Ohio Guidestone, all of those in your local county. And then if they have a local line, it will give you that information as well, local hotline. And so it's really simple. I mean, it's just a list of all 88 counties, which I think is unique from other kind of comprehensive guides that sometimes can be difficult to navigate. And so I'll put that in there as well. But farmers overwhelmingly have shared, and other people have shared, this is just really easy. And that's my favorite thing about it. And we've done that in conjunction with the College of Public Health at OSU. And so we update that as, names of places change or people get added. And so I really love that. But yeah, I've felt a lot more like, though people are still struggling, of course, and things, will never get the stigma will totally never be broken down. I think it's important to know that you all, right, and those that work with producers are bringing us into the conversation more than ever before in the past 3 years that I've been in this position.
Thanks for that. All good to know. Does anyone have any questions or anything? I mean, I'd like to hear more from Matt, maybe some of his programs and relief could help with some stress reduction for farmers. But if anybody has questions or comments, let them rip. Matt, you said you're going to wait to offer some more information on the programs from FSA that could help farmers.
Yes, we can touch on some of that and kind of give an overview of where we're at from the Farm Service Agency side of things. And to kind of build off a little bit of what was discussed earlier about the drought monitor and such. Every Thursday is an update through the U.S. Drought Monitor, which USDA is part of that housing of the Drought Monitor with the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. They through a grant type program are hosting the actual Drought Monitor, which does take a wide variety of consensus from weather data to NOAA data to all kinds of producer input and things of that nature to calculate where we're at a drought level each Thursday, and each Thursday that gets issued. From that, depending on the level of drought, the Secretary of Agriculture in this case, for drought situation specific, we have what we're call a fast track process to designate a disaster declaration specific to drought. Now, drought is the only weather event that has that fast track process, but essentially what that means, or what that was, as soon as a county reached at least a D3 on the drought monitor, they were going to get designated as a drought designation county by the Secretary of Agriculture. So as we currently sit here today, we are at 49 counties in Ohio that have been designated a primary disaster designation for drought for this year. Now, that also takes into all the contiguous counties. So anything that, you know, in most of the cases, what we're seeing, a lot of those contiguous counties were also in the D3, so they were already included in that. But if there are counties that are contiguous to any of those 49 that were not hit the D3 at this point, they are considered contiguous counties and are included in those disaster declarations. Now, as a big picture, what that designation does, the only program that's really tied to those disaster declarations would be emergency loans or emergency operating loans that are available. Now, we often know, you know, at this point in time, folks are not looking for loans, they're looking for assistance. But, you know, and we'll kind of transition into a few of those programs. But, you know, initially when that disaster declaration is issued, it does open up specific emergency loans that are available in all of those counties. Now, specific to drought, we have several programs that aren't necessarily tied to the disaster declarations, but they do use the drought monitor. So they are all in play if the counties hit the D3 level or above. So the first one of that is the livestock forage program. And that forage component of it's a little bit misleading in terms of the way what the program truly is, because the program itself is actually a grazing program. So if a county has hit a D3 level and above, and a producer has acreage that they have either already reported as grazing, or they have not reported it previously, they can come in and do a late file process to report that as grazing. But ultimately, when that county was a D3 and onward, there is assistance and payments made on the total number of grazing acres once they've hit that D3 level. So the catch is it has to be actual grazing acres. It can't be, you know, originally crops that we said were hay fields and then we ended up grazing them. They have to be actual fields that were intended to be, the initial intended use would be for grazing. So that program is open and running in all 49 of those counties that we have hit D3 and have that designation. They don't have to have the designation, but they have the D3 qualification for that. So that is open and running. Our county offices are taking applications on that at this point in time. So if you're in that situation, I know there was someone spoke earlier, had livestock and grazing there. If they've not, please contact their local county office and discuss with them some of those programs. The other program that's kind of tied to this a little bit is our Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, or ELAP. Where this particular program fits in is in the situation where producers may be hauling water. It has to be above what your normal workload or what your normal process would be. So if you're normally hauling water, it has to be something above what you would consider normal. Or in a lot of cases, most people, they have a water system set up, but unfortunately that went dry this summer. So they were hauling in water. This program will assist in assisting producers in the travel costs, or the cost it will not pay for the water specifically, but it will help with the travel costs or the extra inputs to get that water to those locations for those livestock to thrive and continue going on. So that program is out there. The other program we have is the Tree Assistance Program, or the TAP program. And TAP, like the forage program, means it's not just trees, it's trees, bushes, and vines. So we're looking at, fruit trees, we're looking at blueberries, we're looking at grapes if they've hit it. Ultimately, this program looks at if the actual tree, bush, or vine is killed due to the weather event. This program will help producers replenish or replant those particular trees, bushes, or vines. That's different than our NAP program or non-insured assistance program, where TAP looks at the actual tree, bush, or vine, where our NAP program is available like crop insurance for crops that are not covered by crop insurance. So the NAP program covers the actual fruit or what is produced on those trees, bushes, or vines, where the TAP program covers specifically the actual deaths of the tree, bushes, or vines. So that is out there. As I mentioned a little bit, the NAP program, which is non-insured disaster assistance program, it is out there. The caveat to that is, for it to cover this year's drought, it would have had to have been purchased prior to the weather event. So it would have been something they would have had to purchase basically earlier in the year to have that coverage. We do offer that coverage for hay and grazing. I will say traditionally in Ohio, not a lot of folks were purchasing the NAP coverage for grazing or hay, just simply because we've been very blessed with the standpoint of very rarely in Ohio do we find a growing season where we lose several cuttings of hay. You know, a lot of times we'll maybe have a bad first cutting and then we'll make it up in the second or third, or, you know, if we have a bad first, or, you know, a great first cutting and it tapers off, we don't have a total loss, you know, because with the NAP program, it looks at the entire year's production. So oftentimes we make up for that lost lack of hay, or that loss of hay and pastures throughout the season. So it hasn't traditionally been a program that paid a lot, if you will. But in a year like this is certainly a year where the NAP program would be of assistance, just simply because, as I think Nathan was outlining there, you know, the first cutting they got some, but then there was nothing left. There was nothing to bale. There was nothing left on that. So, you know, what we can say right now is no, this program will not cover if it wasn't purchased previously, but we are looking towards 2025 in the sense of a planning tool. The application closing date for NAP coverage for hay and grazing is November 20th or November 15th. So we want to make sure that that's out there and promoted, that if it's something that fits, that's great. It's something just to consider as a tool that could potentially be out there if producers are interested in that. I would certainly encourage them to have that conversation with their local FSA office, because there are some variations to that coverage, where for beginning farmers, limited resource producers, socially disadvantaged producers, our basic coverage is free on those programs. And then for the premium or buy-up coverage on that, it's at a reduced fee. So that is something for those specific producers. It is coverage that can assist for a minimal type fee in there. But certainly, as you're looking to kind of manage your risks in the future, that is something that's available and that's out there, that's certainly worth taking a look at, especially after this season of things that we've seen here. That, you know, this is a year where isn't normal. We hope isn't going to continue on, but you know, we've often said sometimes coverage like this is like your car insurance. You purchase it and you pay for it. You hope you never use it, but when it's there and you need it, it helps to cover it. So this may be something for producers to consider in the NAP program. And then also the other thing, and Christina, if you have anything to add on here, certainly jump in here too. But with our conservation programs, there are emergency haying and grazing options that are available for livestock for specific types of practices that they're in. What I would encourage, if producers have CRP ground that are interested either in themselves haying or grazing, or have someone that's interested in haying and grazing that ground, please contact your county office first, because they do have to kind of evaluate that and kind of rework those contracts a little bit. And it's something that they need to know up front. But I would encourage you certainly to make sure that you reach out to the county office, because there are options available for that CRP ground. The only caveat is the CREP program. The CREP program will not allow for the emergency haying and grazing, just the specifics of that program. But the majority of the other practices, there are some ways where they can participate. But like I said, I would encourage them, please reach out to your county office before you take any action on that, so that you make sure that everything's in line with your contract and everything's in line with what you're planning to do with that, if they need to reevaluate the actual process or the contract that's in place for your practice. So that's kind of a high level, and I know it's a lot of information. I don't, Christina, do you have anything else you want to add into all that?
Matt, I thought you did a really good job, but just to clean up a couple things, the emergency conservation program is also a conservation program that's available in these D2, D3, D4 counties that can help landowners with some financial and technical assistance. But the kicker is that we have to have the county office know about what this is prior to any kind of land disturbance, as well as the national office has to have the information and be approved for that county. So what I'm saying is that ECP is a program to consider if your farm has ran a little dry in the springs, the water has dried up. It's one of those programs that necessarily will not help you today, but in the future, if we ever experience a drought again, or this drought continues, then it can offer assistance later for when you have to go through it again. It can help to mitigate some of that water loss that you have. For Ohio right now, there are 4 counties that have requested ECP coverage, and that is Fairfield, Perry, let me think, Muskingum, and Morgan counties. So if your county, if you are experiencing water loss and ECP might be something of an interest to you, then one of the things that you want to do is contact your FSA office to inquire about the ECP program and to see if that's one of the programs that can get administered through our national office, through our state office, because this does take a little time. And if a producer does go out on their own and does make that disturbance in the land, then unfortunately this program now becomes ineligible. So there's a lot of technical issues there. But one of the things that we want to try to promote is just simply, if it's a need, talk to your county office, see if this can be something that can be administered and kind of go from there. I did, Matt, also add into the chat as you were talking, the U.S. Drought Monitor, the fact sheet, which does provide a little bit of background information about the U.S. Drought Monitor, as well as each of the programs that tie specifically to the Drought Monitor as they're administered through FSA. And the second link that I put in there as well was just simply FSA's created an online disaster tool that you can just plug and chug your county, your information, and just simply see what's available for you in your county. That way, if you've never visited a USDA service center before or an FSA office, then you kind of have an idea of the different programs, loan options that are available to you. And then I guess more importantly, just to wrap that up, through this drought, we have seen an influx of new farmers that have never graced the USDA service center doors before. Now, what that means is it's taking our staff a little bit more time, because we need to sit down with you one-on-one to establish a customer and a farm and tract ID number. We've got to go through eligibility. And then finally, we've got to go through the programs that you're eligible for. And this will take a little bit of time. So if this is something that you think you can get accomplished in a few minutes, 20 minutes, this is going to take more like an hour and a half or 2. So our staff knows very well what kind of information is needed. So when you call to make that appointment, please understand that our offices are now booked out through, I want to say November. I heard Dr. Patterson even mention Thanksgiving in a few of the counties. These programs are going to continue through the remainder of this year. And I believe LFPs and ELAPs signups aren't until January 30th of 2025.
Yes,
so we
that's
still
correct. Yeah.
Thank you. So we still have some time, but there's free money on the table that if individuals are interested in these programs, they need to check out, because you guys have all mentioned not just one disaster, multiple disasters that are occurring this year that's putting a lot of stress on our farming community. And if we can help to alleviate some of that financial burden, then please come into our FSA offices. Please call them, set up that appointment, ask them about what you need, so that they can kind of have an understanding of where you're coming from, so they can have that better communication, that conversation one-on-one with you.
Yes, absolutely. And Nicole, thank you for adding in the chat. She had added in, we had hosted a few weeks back, actually, I guess about a month ago now, time's flying. We hosted a webinar session with Senator Brown's office. And we had a PowerPoint presentation that we shared as part of that. So she included that in there. That kind of outlines my summary there as far as what the specific programs are. So thank you for adding that to the chat. I think that's a good tool there. And as Christina mentioned there in the chat, that recovery tool, or discovery tool, I should say, is very good in the sense that it does kind of give you a general idea of what you might be eligible for, or what might fit in your county. What we've heard from that is that producers that may not have traditionally participated in the programs got a little bit of a comfort level before they went into the office specifically to kind of see, this is potentially a program that's out there. This is maybe what it's about. This might be where it fits. So I encourage you to share that with folks, because that we've heard a lot of positives come back from that. And then just the only other thing I would add on that, we've had some questions coming in here on the last few sessions we've hosted since the hurricanes have come through, and what specifically is available for that. Right now, as we sit here, most of that crop damage, like Nathan was saying, and some of the other folks were saying, due to corn, beans, wheat, or not wheat, but corn, soybeans, things of that nature, our traditional row crops. Most of that's going to be covered through federal crop insurance, and there's not any additional or specific program at this point in time. Our NAP program is out there if they had coverage. Now, we have had at some points in time additional ad hoc programs that have been announced specific to storms, hurricanes. As of right now, there's not been any sort of new programs or inclusion of anything additional. So right now, that's where we're sitting. That's not to say that there potentially won't be something on down the road, but those programs oftentimes come several months, if not a year or so after the weather event. So, I mean, that's something that will be put out or publicized if there are additional programs or ad hoc programs that may generate from those specific storms that we've had here in the last couple of weeks.
I just like to add that I have began the process with my local FSA office, and going in and speaking with those girls, and they were very helpful in determining what programs I was eligible for, and I had a couple parcels that weren't exactly classified right, and on a normal year, it may not have been a big deal, but then since we have the drought this year, we were able to go back and do our reclassification on that, and they were all wonderful. So anybody, I encourage you guys to go in and work with your local county offices, because those girls in there or guys in there are great to work with, and they're to help you guys.
Great. We're glad to hear that. We're glad to have someone give the testimony to that. It's always what we like to hear. And like Christina mentioned there, just please reach out to them. Give them a call, set up an appointment to get in there. We do have a little time with some of those programs till the end of January. We also realize the stress and the level we're at on things that folks want to get in there and get things taken care of. So the best I can say is to make sure you reach out and give them a call, and they get you an appointment. That way they can spend the time there and work you through that process and see what might fit your situation and what might be out there to help.
And some of those FSA county offices are trained in mental health first aid. So some of them are ready to help you with that too.
Yes.
I had a few quick questions for Matt and Christina. I want to say, hey, both of you, thank you for all that incredibly detailed information, and thank you for speaking to producers who have never dealt with an FSA office before. I know a lot of the folks that we work with probably fall into that bucket. Not all, but many. Two quick follow-up questions. You said, Matt, I think you said the deadline for NAP is November 15th. That's of this year for next season?
Yes, for our perennial crops, it is a November deadline for 2025. So then our annual crops have a March 15th deadline. So they wouldn't actually be until next year. But yes, any of the perennial crops, which would include that haying and grazing, would be the November deadline, which we can I can add into here in a little bit. I can add the fact sheet for NAP and stuff with those deadlines if you think that would be helpful.
That would be great. And so, with the backlog in appointments, would there be any concern about folks making that deadline? Should they be calling their FSA office like yesterday? Yeah.
They can call the office. We have some options to take that coverage level. It's something they can submit the forms to the county office with not necessarily having that appointment, if you will, by then. But yes, I mean, it's not that they're going to be cut out of the program if they don't get on there right now, but at least make the initial contact, I would say. And as long as they've contacted the county office by that November date, we have some options to work with them. You know, if the county simply can't get them into the office by that deadline, we have what we call a register process that we can utilize to take that producer's name and information. It would still make them timely in those cases. So yes, I mean, I would encourage them if they've never participated in the NAP program before and they do have some interest in that, the sooner they reach out, the better, just simply because that can give the county some time to explain the program. Not that it's overly complicated or anything. It's just, it does have the requirements. You know, we've got to hit the acreage reporting timelines. We've got to make sure that we're providing our production that we're selling. And it's just the background information to the program, because if they're going to purchase it and come into it, we want them to be successful in the program too, and meet the deadlines and meet the requirements for submitting their production and things of that nature.
And Milo, Matt, just to clarify, that date is November 20th.
Yes, Christy, I was going to say that. It's
I'm
November
so
20th
sorry,
and March 15th. No, you're good. Thank you for catching me on that. It is November 20th.
I know it's 5 days. Yeah, I know it's 5 days. It's just 5 more days for the
yes, yes. And March 15th is the spring deadline for the annual crops.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Matt. And one other, could you talk through just a little bit about what the process looks like for the livestock forage program? Because that's something that I think like a decent amount of our folks might actually be able to take advantage of, but I don't know how many of them actually know that program exists.
Sure. And we can get you the specific fact sheets on that too. Really what it does is it looks at the amount of time that a county is in a D3, D4, and there's a different price level that's determined on the level of the disaster. So if it's a D3, it's one price level. If it's a D4, it's a little bit higher price, but it's all specific to the amount of acres that are grazed. So it looks at what they have either reported already as grazed, or we have some options to do a late file. Now with the late file, which just means that they didn't report that acreage or that crop by July 15th, there is a small fee for a late file to it. But ultimately that program looks specifically to the number of acres they have designated to grazing, and it will make a payment based on those number of acres. And like I said, I can give you that fact sheet and we can add that to the chat as well. That'll give you that breakdown. Now, some of that I think was also in that PowerPoint that was or the kind of the presentation that was added in there that gives you kind of the specific breakdowns of like the prices and the levels, and it'll pay for the entire time that goes once the county entered the D3, and then the end of the grazing period is like October, the end of October, because normally in Ohio we're done grazing by we use the the first frost, or kind of the roundabouts when the estimated first frost is. But it will continue to pay that program, or pay that amount for that amount of time frame that county was in that D3, at least the minimum D3, to the end of the grazing period. So once a producer also makes an application with that, for that example where some of them were D3 and they transitioned to a D4, it's a one-time application. But if there are additional movements in that, additional payments will be issued to those producers automatically. So once they've made that application, it will continue to monitor that drought monitor. It's all plugged into the system together to read each other, and it will continue to make those payments up through the end of the grazing period for those particular producers that have made that application. So they don't have to come in every time and make a new application if the designation level changed.
And the end of the grazing period is in Ohio, October 31st of 2024. Just to be clear on that. And I plugged Matt into the chat, the fact sheet for the livestock forage program. This
Thanks,
is a program.
Christina.
You're welcome. This is a program that I will have to admit has been very easy for our county office staff to administer quickly, and it provides direct funds very quickly to the producer's bank account automatically. So that has been a serious lifeline for those that are going through a lot of hardship right now. And although we can't make an individual 100% whole, please understand that these programs will never pay back 100%. These do provide that assistance to help you get through the rough times. So that's where we're at right now. But they are providing a lot of assistance for those individuals that are also looking to purchase additional feed sources that they may need to help go through the winter.
And that's the things we've heard from some of the producers. I certainly appreciate Nathan's commentary there and his share with that. But a lot of what we've heard is, no, it doesn't fix everything that's been lost this year in the drought, but it's maybe held off a little bit of maybe not having to sell as many cows, or not having to sell as many, whatever, maybe, help with having to purchase some of the hay, things of that nature. So, if anything we can do to help, or anything that's out there and available, those specific programs are not, there's no fee to participate. The only charge that may be in there is that late file fee if they've not previously reported that acreage. But short of that, that's the NAP program is the only one that is a purchase program, if you will. And even at that, we have some levels of where we can assist with that for that beginning farmer, socially disadvantaged, limited resource or producers, where it is a free basic level and a reduced buy-up coverage. So we encourage as many folks as we can to talk with their FSA office to see, because I do really think there's a lot of programs like Milo, like you said, that folks may not even be aware that's out there. And anything you all can do to help us share and deliver that message is very much appreciated, because we want to make sure we can reach as many folks as we can.
And just to add one last point about LFP, it was created out of the 2014 Farm Bill. And it's one program that we have not utilized here in Ohio until this year. That essentially was created because of the droughts that a lot of the other West states have had to incur for multiple years. And this year, as we went through the severity of this drought, and once we triggered a D2 for 8 consecutive weeks, that's when LFP kicked in for the first time. And that was essentially in late August for MEGs. And then that started the cycle for the other 49 counties up to this point.
Thank you, both of you, for all of that. And thank you for mentioning that, Christina. I didn't realize that program had never been used in Ohio before.
Yes, it was designed, it is a forage program, but mostly it's been utilized in those drought-stricken areas in like Texas, Oklahoma, those kind of things, and that's why it's tied directly to the drought monitor. But yes, once we've hit that either 8 consecutive weeks or D2, which I'm not sure. I think most of them went on to D3 or D4 by that time. So I mean, once they hit that D3, they're automatically qualified there. So yeah, it's honestly, it's a program we hoped we never got into because we didn't want to have this weather situation. But since we did get there, it is something that's absolutely there and available. And we want to try to get the word out there as much as possible where it can assist.
Yeah, I'll echo Milo, very helpful and encouraging to some extent in terms of what can be offered to farmers for assistance. Does anyone else have questions on that information, or any more questions for Matt and Christina?
I have a question for Bridget, if that's okay.
Sure.
Bridget and Nathan, or whoever wants to respond. You mentioned some really amazing resources, and I totally resonate and appreciate what you said, Bridget, about like how hard it can potentially be to have these conversations about mental health in different spaces, and how do we break down that door. And I definitely want to be an ally in that. And so I guess my question is basically, how can organizations, since we have so many OEFFA folks on the call, how can organizations like ours do better with that? You know, we are aware of a lot of the resources that you shared, and we have them in several of our different communications and stuff. But as far as being more proactive about it, just curious if you have any suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nathan, you can chime in as well. I think one of the biggest things that I have experienced or been a part of is any kind of event that you have, even if it's like 10 or 15 minutes of taking aside and spending intentional time to say, you know, we're going to actually talk about these resources, right? Or we're going to have a speaker come in. You know, several weeks ago, there was that watch party on, they had a speaker with the drought that Soil and Water in Fairfield County and Muskingum County had, I believe, or Guernsey, I can't remember. And one of the counties asked for me to come via Zoom and do like a 5 to 10 minute commercial, they called it, you know, prior to the actual watch party. So like that was an intentional way for them to say like, okay, you know, we're having this big other, you know, watch party, but we want you to come and speak about the resources that are available, because it's easy to hand things out, but it's different when you're saying this is what's in front of you. Or another example is Rural Action. They do that 16-week new and beginning farmers workshop, where it's like that mentor and mentee program. So it's somebody who's been a farmer and now walks through with somebody else who is a new farmer. And one of the sessions is mental health. And so, you know, I go and I speak at that. And so, you know, that's a very intentional thing, you know, and it's hard to carve out that time, right? To say, you know, we're going to intentionally take one of our whole sessions of this 15-week session when there's a lot to other stuff to talk about. But we view this as very important enough to spend a whole session on this. And it doesn't have to be a whole hour, right? It can be just 10 to 15 minutes. Or, you know, if you're just have some other event and say, okay, like, let's just take this 10 minutes to do this. Or if you have an event where I can come and speak, or Nathan can come and speak, or whoever, it doesn't have to be one of the two of us. I don't want to volunteer Nathan to say, you know, let's have this speaker come and talk for half an hour as part of our hour to 2 hour presentation or whatever your event is about. I think that just holds a lot more weight, because then you're holding up those resources and that information. Because I always joke that sometimes I feel like I could go door to door with this resource information, and we have magnets and things like that, and they still would tell me, I don't know where the resources are, you know? And so it's getting that right in front of their faces and talking about it, I think, makes a difference, but being intentional about it. One of the other things that I wanted to share before, Nathan, if you have anything you wanted to add, is that our Farm Stress team also created a program to help farmers feel more comfortable reaching out to therapists, because like literally my second week in this position, the dean of our college reached out to me and said, there's a farmer that wants counseling, but wants somebody who is a farmer or who knows about farming. And there's just not very many counselors and therapists that have 2 full-time jobs. Although Nathan knows somebody like that, don't you, Nathan?
I do.
And her and I are very good friends, and we do a
Yep.
lot of work together. So, but I was literally, and he was in Wayne County, and I was literally I used to be a full-time traditional therapist, and I was literally calling agencies saying like, do you have a farmer on staff, or does somebody know farming? And everybody's like, no, like, why are you calling me? I'm like, okay, like I'm just checking. And so we created this, what we call Farm Stress Certified, and it's basically a 30,000-foot overview of farming is kind of what we describe it. And it's a 3-module course that mental health professionals can take. And it's a really broad overview of everything from, just basic, like what is an acre? You know what I mean? What are some of the biggest traditional stressors that farmers have? Obviously, weather. And then, the stress of ag law, succession planning, childcare on the farm, all those kind of things. We cover that. And I've kind of started to talk about it as like a language barrier, right? They don't know what they don't know. And then it's also helping the farmers feel more comfortable reaching out to mental health professionals. And we've had over 1,000 people take this training, but not everybody is a licensed mental health professional. And so we can't put those people on our website. That's just something that we've chosen as the parameter to list on our website. But we do have those names listed on our Farm Stress website. There's a tab that says like get help now or find a professional is what the tab is. And you can see the list, and we're trying to add, like I'll go through every once in a while and of the list of people that have taken the training to just say like, hey, we're adding people to our directory, just checking to see if anybody wants to be added. And so we add people, and we're actually doing a module course right now. We just had our first one, and then the second one is next Tuesday, and then the third one is the next Tuesday after that. And so then when people say, I want a professional, I want to talk to somebody, we can say, well, here's this training, that OSU Extension is offering. Maybe we can find somebody for you. Or them just knowing, even if we don't find somebody that's Farm Stress certified, even if they just know, okay, mental health professionals really do care. I mean, and these mental health professionals, they are shocked by everything that we tell them. Like, they don't know how much a tractor costs. They don't know how much a tractor accident, can cost them, or how, detrimental the weather can be. And it's been phenomenal for them to take this training, and we've received overwhelmingly positive results from it. And so, yeah, so Nathan, I'll let you talk as well to Nicole's question.
So I think the biggest thing that when I talk to organizations is make sure that your staff have been mental health first aid trained.
I
You
agree with
guys
that,
are
Nathan. I love mental health first aid. It's my favorite training.
you guys are the ones that are on the front lines day to day, knocking on doors, talking to farmers. If you guys don't have the tools to identify the situations that may be going on there and know how to help somebody, then we're doing everybody a big disservice. So when I talk to groups and organizations, that is my number one first thing. And then, after that, like Bridget said, if you have an event, before you close out, 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a big, long to-do spiel. I know if it doesn't matter, because I speak a lot on a lot of different topics across the state, and whether it's soil health or Farm Bureau events or whatever I'm doing that day, I always spend 5 minutes at the close of it to let people know that they're not alone, and things, that there's resources out there. And like I said, I've had so many people come up to me after a meeting, after I've said something, that they're like, if this was a full-blown meeting about mental health, I probably never would have went to it. But I learned more listening to you in 5 minutes and you've given me resources, and these are the issues that I'm experiencing, and whatever. I've had the whole gamut of people come up to me. And thank you for saying it. Thank you for acknowledging that our feelings are real, and what we're going through is not just something that we've conjured up in our heads. It's legitimate. And so those really, I mean, just be intentional with everything you do. Keep people's thoughts and feelings and what they're going through or possibly going through in the back of your head at all times, and just love on your membership and love on your people.
Yeah, absolutely, Nathan. I'm gonna have to also agree with you on mental health first aid. I always joke that if I got paid to endorse mental health first aid, I would be able to quit my job. I'll put information about mental health first aid in the chat. It is a wonderfully evidence-based nation. It's actually internationally based curriculum that OSU Extension can offer. We can train you, but there's other agencies that do it as well, since we don't own mental health first aid. But I'm getting ready to go do a 3 days of training in a row, which is a little bit a little bit overwhelming, but it actually soothes me to train people because I know that I'm making a difference. It is a longer training. It's about 6 hours. And I get that, people say like, oh, this is too much, but Nathan could probably attest to this. By the end of the day, people are like, I could have spent more time at this training, and I've taught soil and waters, I've taught NRCS, I've taught some FSAs, I've taught extensions, and, people come to this either because they have to, or because, they want to take it for their farmers, and they come out of this really learning, man, this impacts either me or this is a part of like my family. This is applicable to my family. And I have had so many responses, so many great responses. And Nathan, you're right. I mean, you are doing a disservice if you don't recognize the warning signs and symptoms, because even if one life is saved because one person took mental health first aid out of 10 people or 20 people that take it. So I'll put the information for mental health first aid in the chat. And if any of you are interested in taking it, we offer trainings, but you can also reach out to, local mental health recovery boards, or, we've trained all of Ohio Farm Bureau staff in mental health first aid. That was several years ago now, 2019, 2020. So yeah, I'll do that. Thanks, Nathan, for mentioning that.
Thank you both. Amazing resources, and I will certainly be an advocate at OEFFA for all of these things.
We've got a few minutes left. And if I can put Stephanie on the spot again, I'm curious if you have any information. I know I was surprised looking at the drought details in my region. I'm in Meigs County, that we were only like 5 inches below rainfall right now. I imagine the combination of the heat this summer and that lack of rainfall obviously contributed. What can you tell us about next year, like in terms of planning for the future here? Is there any data or trend that is being observed?
Yeah, so I'll go back. Usually Aaron always tells us drought begets drought. So once we're in that deficit, it's easy to stay there or worsen. So I know Aaron Wilson usually works with Jim Knoll with NOAA to do the long-term forecast that we'll distribute in our corn newsletter. So they haven't released that yet for next year, but just in the short term, I'm thinking about any wheat, cover crop, even August seeded alfalfa. If you haven't had that rainfall in the past 2 weeks, what's that going to look like in the spring once it breaks out of dormancy? Also thinking about the Ohio River, if we have lower levels, is that going to impact transportation? Is that going to have any effects when we're trying to move grain through those trade distribution routes? So those are all things I'm thinking about, as well as some longer consequences After we get the combines put back in the shop, what are other things we need to be aware of going into next year? Other ones that we're thinking about as well are even weed control. So our volunteer beans, we're also going to take care of that. But we're seeing those that did get the rainfall, a flush of weeds now emerging, and thinking about, does it pencil out if you don't typically do a fall burn down application? For those that are using those technologies, those chemistries, is that something that you should be considering? Or for organic producers, just being vigilant, there might be another layer of that weed control for next year. But I wish I knew what the weather was going to be like next year.
Yeah, good information. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions or final comments that you'd like to share before we wrap things up today? I can say I'm a little disappointed in the lack of farmer participation, but in terms of like this nearly OEFFA in service that we've had from all of you, it's been rich. And Matt and Christina, I obviously looked at the website and resources in the week leading up to our meeting here today, and just having you be able to explain it in real face to face, in a sense, really clarified lots of things, and yeah, definitely enhanced the information that's on your website. So appreciate you guys being here.
Yes, absolutely. And if you have questions as it continues to go, please, if you have producers as well, please reach out to us, and we'll help as any way we can.
That's great to know, and really appreciated. If there's nothing else, thanks everybody for being here. And this is recorded. If you'd like, I can share the recording to everyone and get this information dispersed as we can.